Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Zoho Live. We're talking to Karthik Sridharan today, the founder and CEO of Flexible and Remote Tools. If you followed Karthik on social media, you'd know what a big believer of bootstrapping he is. Needless to say that he has grown Flexible from 0 to 2 million in revenue, entirely self-funded. Thank you so much for joining us in Zoho Live, Karthik.
Thank you so much for having me, Vanathy. A big pleasure.
Absolutely. Karthik, I want to begin with what was the cognition behind creating Flexible? I mean, why or how did you think you could make a full-blown business by hiring tech talents, be it developers or designers or product managers? Like, what was the cognition behind it?
Yeah, often people think that startup ideas drop like apples on people's heads. They think that one day they sit and they get this amazing idea. For me, it wasn't so much. I'd worked at JP Morgan Investment Banking. Then I just started my MBA at IIM Ahmedabad, and that's when I realized that I don't want to be working in a traditional company in a traditional role, and I wanted to explore something in entrepreneurship. And that time I just analyzed various ideas that I was observing, various problems I thought we could solve, and there was a lot of talk about the gig economy exploding and so on. That's when I felt that there is another economy that's being totally ignored, which is the talent economy, there's a very clear distinction I feel between the gig and the talent economy, where talent is all about quality and gig is all about quantity and just being cheap. Right. So I felt there's a big market over there, and businesses really value quality, and they would pay money if you really can promise them and deliver on it. And we felt that tech is the place that is going to blow big, and people will also over a period of time want to build their own personal brands, and that's where possibly freelancers will lead the talent growth in the future. So I wanted to explore it. Can't say for sure that I felt or I knew that it was going to be a big thing, but I knew that tech was a big market, and we could at least make some kind of a living in that space. My goal was never to be the next billion-dollar business at the very beginning. It was just to do good work in the space and possibly do something that I was passionate about.
I think it's safe to say that you did succeed at your guess. And so let me ask you, after the idea of Flexible kicked in, what was the first few critical steps towards realizing the idea? Because to just conceive an idea is one thing, but to make it a reality, considering I think you said you had a 9-to-5 job, right? And you had to quit it and start this startup all from the scratch. So how was it like?
So actually, it wasn't a 9-to-5 job. So I'd already quit it and I joined my MBA college at that point of time. And I'd quit the placement. So we have placements in our MBA college. I said, I don't want to join it. And I started working full time on Flexible. So what were the first steps? The first steps were to make 100 mistakes, I guess. So that's what we did. We made a lot of mistakes over the way. And one of the biggest mistakes, which I share very publicly about, is about trying to make a product, because very early on we were sure that we're going to scale very quickly, all misplaced confidence, right? So we were very sure that we're going to scale. So the only bottleneck we saw was tech, right? Saying that, okay, we need a product that can help us scale, and so that manual processes aren't a bottleneck. So that was the very first thing we did. We of course spoke to customers on both sides. We spoke to freelancers, companies, and we were like, okay, yeah, I think there is a market here. But immediately after we decided that we'll build a product, we built the first one. We decided, okay, maybe that wasn't the best one. We threw it into the bin. We built another one. We made a mistake there again. We threw it into the bin. But I think the biggest blessing for us at that point of time was that we didn't have an infinite amount of money, right? So at some point of time, we had to say, okay, I think we need to pause a bit over here and really think, how is any of this going to affect the first dollar we're going to make, right? And how is it going to affect the first $100 or first $1,000 we're going to make? If manual processes aren't really a bottleneck at that point of time, we possibly don't really have to think about that as a bottleneck at all. We just have to think about, okay, let's make money, let's survive for a few months, let's understand the market better, let's actually experience the bottlenecks and then try to solve for it. So I think we then just used a simple Google sheet. We reached out to people over LinkedIn for freelancers. We reached out to companies through our network in India to see if they wanted to hire anyone. And then we just sort of built on it step by step.
Okay, so that wasn't any playbook or anything. You had to make the mistakes and you had to learn from them right from the start.
Yeah, absolutely. As in, we were first-time entrepreneurs, all three of us. So my co-founders are Suvansh and Rishikesh. So all three of us were first-time entrepreneurs. Of course, we read a lot of stuff, and each of us had some kind of experience in non-entrepreneurial stuff, but still we'd worked in companies. So there is a gap when you actually hit the road and you realize that, okay, all the ideas and all the thoughts and strategy that you had in mind really don't pan out the way, right? So
Right.
what I realized is that strategy, at least in a very early stage startup, is just a series of very small decisions you take on a daily basis, right? So
Beautiful.
typically people like to read about Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, and they say, okay, you need to revolutionize this industry and do some amazing stuff, which is good, which is fine. But at the end of the day, when you're an early stage startup which hasn't made a single dollar, what you need to do is think about the first dollar you're going to make. So I think it was about making that mistake, realizing, and then I think we got a certain clarity and were able to focus on very realistic, pragmatic things, which would help us make money today and help us get through and survive in the first few months so that we could start planning for maybe the next 6 months and the next 1 year.
That's completely perspective. Beautiful. Thank you, Karthik. And so you are a bootstrapped, profitable company, and Zoho has enormous respect for such companies because we are bootstrapped ourselves for the 20 years or so. So from the perspective of a bootstrapped company, if you asked our CEO, he would say that capital is not the money that you pump in. Capital rather is in cultivating the know-how of building things. It is in taking care of your people who are doing the work and all of those kind of things, as opposed to the crude idea of seeing capital as just the financial part alone. What are your thoughts on that?
No, of course, Sridhar is amazing. He has a lot of great things to say. So I totally concur with it. I think I just to expand on that particular idea, I think very early on, people feel that money is the biggest bottleneck that they have to achieve greatness, right? Like achieve greatness in their startup. Whereas it couldn't be less true, at least for most software tech startups, because it's like if I were to just give an analogy, right? Like Sachin Tendulkar, even with a bad bat, will hit a six, and even if you give a good bat to me, I'll still not be able to hit one. So money is often, you just can't throw money at problems and just expect problems to solve themselves. You need to be able to solve the problems in a very first principles way, be able to get into the ditches, understand things, make mistakes, learn from them, find solutions that are working for you, not a just general copy paste and so on. So I think there's a lot of truth to it. Further, I also think that there's just so much of pressure on very early stage entrepreneurs that VC funding is equivalent to success, right? Which is not true, right? Because VC funding is a means to an end. It's not the end itself, right? And what I think it evolved, even my thought process evolved over time. And I think how people need to really view money and finance and funding and so on is as one of the many hundred tools that they have, right? So I have, let's say I build a great product, that's a tool for me. I find out, a great way to market my startup, that's a great tool for me. And similarly, do I really need money to grow is the question that you need to ask, or do I need 10, 15, $100 million to grow is the question to ask over here. So then that becomes a necessary tool. Otherwise, it's not a tool you need. It's a tool you could have. But whether it's a tool you need or not, whether it's a necessity is a question that needs to be asked. So I do resonate with a lot of what Sridhar has said. I think those are some of the thoughts that I have around that particular topic or idea.
Beautiful. And I think the pressure to raise more VC funding also comes because it is these companies that are celebrated by the media itself. They call them unicorns. But then we see unicorns coming every day after the other. So that somehow makes us want to go back to the start and think maybe it is the bootstrapped ones that are making actual profit that we should celebrate as unicorns,
Yeah, I think there is a lot of merit to celebrating bootstrap startups, especially because there is not much spoken about them, right? And in a certain way, I like to celebrate entrepreneurship in general, whether it's bootstrapped or otherwise. There's nothing wrong in raising VC funding if that's the route that you want to go by. I just think that it's a very personality-driven choice, right? People, as they say, right, the grass is always greener on the other side, right? So when you're a bootstrap startup, you wish that, oh, if I had all that money, you think all your problems would just melt away, right? And at the same time, there are a lot of challenges if you were to just take up a huge amount of money, managing investors, and pretty much if you've raised money once, you're going to be raising money for a lifetime, right? It's basically a journey from one round to the next round. So I just think that yes, bootstrap startups definitely can be and should be celebrated. And I personally, and that's where I think I've been a lot more vocal in the last couple of years, is that I think all bootstrap startups have to recognize that it's a superpower they have, right? That where they're not really reliant on an external investor, right? And the moment you realize that you control your own destiny, nothing can be more powerful than that, because you're making money, you're making customers happy on a day in day out basis. They pay you money and you're able to make your investments accordingly. So you don't have anyone external to really please, to get money and to survive and to grow. So there is that merit to it. Further, I think everyone needs to hold their narrative. Yes, definitely tech media celebrates funding and funded startups a lot, and they get easy PR, right? But today, let's say, compare it to 20 years back, there is just so much you can do to market yourself, right? Put your narrative, put your story out there. And I think every bootstrap startup owes it to themselves to be able to do that. And I feel that people in general root a lot more for bootstrap startups versus VC funded startups because they are a lot more relatable and they want them to succeed. So I think using all of these things, you got to use it as an advantage rather than view it as something like, okay, maybe VC funded startups are celebrated way too much.
Yeah, Zoho agrees with you, Karthik. So let's talk about this issue. Bootstrapping is seen as an interim state before the funding, as in, in your case also, I mean, I wouldn't say in your case, but generally any company that starts up is bootstrapped, but it is only bootstrapped until it is being funded by a VC. But in your case, you're choosing to remain bootstrapped even after having tasted success and profit. Why is that? It seems like you made a conscious decision to stay this way.
So again, I think, two of the points that I mentioned a little before. One is, I think, as I said, funding is a tool, right? It's a tool to achieve where you want to be. If you think that you can do without the tool, great. Like, why do you need it, right? So I think at this point of time, and that's where I say, maybe, I don't know, 2 years into the future, maybe we need funding, right? Like, can never say never. But at this point of time, I don't think that that's a necessity. So I can't, we can't make a decision that we need to start the fundraise process or, reach out to VCs because it's a fashion statement, right? Because everyone out there is doing it and it'll just seem a little more, savvy. And we'll also be one of those, famous VC funded startups out there. So I don't think that's a good motivation. You need to be true to what is actually the necessity for your startup success. And I currently don't think that that's a necessity as such. Secondly, I think, of course, it's a very personality-driven choice. As I said, my two co-founders, Rishikesh and Suvanch, and me, are very patient people. So we aren't in this for an overnight success. We aren't in this for just we've made something and we sell it and we move on to the next thing that we have done that we are going to be doing. So it's something that we are in for, let's say, the next couple of decades, right? Like just the way Zoho has been. So it just helps when you have that kind of mindset to know that I don't need to, hit this metric, hit this revenue metric, or, if I don't do that, I'm, all hell will break loose. That's not the case for us. So there is no pressure cooker for us. So in such a, setting and with our personality, we think being the way and having full control on how we want to grow it, works better for our mindset, works better for our personality. And that's why I say a lot of times that choosing whether to fund your startup or not, of course, the VCs need to fund you. That is one part of it. But the other part is that you need to ask yourself whether that's your personality aligns with that kind of a choice or not.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you. And let's talk about some of the challenges involved in startups, Karthik. One of the primary or the major challenge that comes to my mind is how to make a business self-sustaining before you run out of the initial investment. How did you face it? Can you share your experience?
So as I said, I think a lot happened because we made two, failed products. We spent almost $5,000. That's like around 3.5, 4 lakhs each, right, in Indian rupees. And we were just investing our own savings into it. So at some point of time, we just reached a point where, okay, we didn't have infinite money in our, bank accounts. So it just, we were just very focused on making enough money to survive the next month, right? So I think when people talk of scale, right, you say that you need to scale your startup and startups need to scale. I think people talk of scale as if it is an absolute concept, right? That scale is X million number of users. But I think that's not true, right? I think scale is very relative to what your startup's current age is, right? So if you're a startup that just started, scale for you is being able to make $100, right? Just make $100, survive the next week or two, and then talk about your next level of scale. Once you've reached $100, your next level of scale is probably 1,000 and then 10,000. Like, I guess you get the point. So my point overall being is that you can't say that when you've just got an idea and you're starting on day zero, right? You can't say my vision of the startup is next 5 years, right? Your vision needs to expand with the growth of your startup, right? Like, for example, my vision 4 years back was not how it is today. I was just trying to survive the next month. Today, I'm at a position, I think, where I'm able to think of the next year to 2 years at the very maximum, right? Like that's the zone I'm looking at, and that's the survival mode that I'm trying to look at. So when I say survive, I'm like, okay, I need to do and be successful in the next 1 or 2 years. What will hold for me thereafter? Yes, I have a broad idea, but that's not my daily focus. So I think when people try to sustain, they need to understand what they're sustaining, what duration they're sustaining for, and what their targets are. When you try to aim way beyond what your target should be, your goals become so vague that you start missing them. I think it's just got to be a little more realistic and a little grounded in where your startup currently exists and in the growth phase that is.
Right. I think I recall what Sridhar says in one of the interviews. 0 to 5 years of you starting a company doesn't even count. That's like you laying the ground. It comes from the 5th year, is what he says.
So I guess we don't count yet. we haven't reached the 5 year mark.
Profitable already, so that's a great news.
Yeah. No, that's true. I guess, we a lot of our successes come in the last year and a half. So I can relate with what Sridhar said.
Right. And we spoke about mistakes, Karthik. You spoke about the mistakes that you made itself. So assuming that mistakes are a given, the question then becomes how to make recoverable mistakes, like how to make good mistakes and not be killed in the process.
I guess, like if only we could live retrospectively, it'll be amazing, right? Like you just use a time machine and you can keep correcting things, but that's not the world we live in, right? So I think a certain mentality is to be comfortable with making mistakes, right? And I think that's what the last 4 years, maybe at the very core, has taught me, in the sense that I almost take mistakes to be an inevitable factor of starting up and every decision of mine, right? There is a higher chance of it being a mistake versus it being a right decision. I think not making a mistake and being absolutely inert in saying that, okay, I would rather not take a decision, but rather than make a wrong one, is where things start going wrong. In terms of whether it is recoverable or not, I think, it's easy to say in a vague way, but I'll try to do my best. But when I look at any particular, decision that I have to make, I look at what the maximum downside is. Right? Like if I were to go through it and it doesn't work out, right? Things go wrong. What's the worst that could happen? Is that worst something that I can live with? Is the question I need to be asking. If that that decision could drive me out of business, surely that's not an easy decision and possibly not something that I should be taking lightly and maybe not taking at all. But if it's something that, okay, it possibly is some certain amount of money lost, which doesn't drive me out of business, it's a certain amount of time lost, which is like, okay, fine. But so I think it's about being able to get to a place where you say the downside is something that I can live with,
Right.
right? And thereafter it just becomes a little more easy to make the decisions and live with the consequences of it. So I don't know if there's anything called a recoverable mistake, but maybe something where you say that, yeah, I'm comfortable with the ill effects of what the decision could have.
Right. Great. Thank you. And so the tools with which we build matters, Karthik, you also touched upon it when we started. On one hand, it feels like businesses are spoiled for choice. There are like so many tools out in the market. And on the other hand, still nothing quite seems to cut it in terms of I use this tool and how much profit did I get from it. So what are some of the ways in which startups or early startups could make a choice on what tools should they use?
I guess choosing your first tool, of course, do the research that you've got to do, choose one. I think what people try to do early on is over optimize for every edge case, right? Like, so when in engineering we call it an edge case, which is basically trying to solve for every other rare case that might occur in the various things that you try to do. I think your tools, if they have constraints, especially in your early days, and as Sridhar said, the first 5 years don't count, so let's count the first 5 years. In your first 5 years, I don't think you should be very too bothered about your tools imposing a certain amount of constraints on your business, right? In the sense that if you have to do certain manual processes to overcome the deficiencies of your tool, you should go with it. It's fine, right? Instead of saying that, okay, let me build a product from scratch so that I can cover every bit of edge case possible with my own product versus using a ready-made product off the market. Why I say that is because a startup throws 1,000 problems at you, right? You need to be able to prioritize which ones you want to be solving. And if you are trying to solve for all the rare cases that your startup might face, it's not really the best use of your time and energy, right? You need to be focusing on things that make the maximum impact. And I feel when you have a certain amount of constraints imposed on you, and this is not only got to do with tools and products, but in general, whether even if you were to move this context even to money, right? When money is constrained, you tend to make less stupid decisions, right? So even with tools, I think you need to be able to live with a certain amount of constraints. And with that thing in mind, yes, choose the best tool that is out there. Try to optimize your costs with that. Yes, buy one or subscribe to one which people have good reviews about and solves the most of your use case. But at the end of the day, live with a certain number of constraints that it throws on you till you feel that you can't live with the constraints whatsoever. And that is the only thing that is stopping you from the next level of success, which I think is not the case ever for early stage startups, at least for the first, as Sridhar said, 5 years.
Makes sense. And since we're talking about tools, I see you talk in length in social media about no-code platforms or low-code platforms. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I think, of course, now it's no code has become a really big phrase and again a fashion statement for people. It wasn't so much for us. I think for us, it was just a necessity. And I think, again, that's how I think about most things. As I said, even funding should be a necessity. And for us, no code tools also gave us that leverage to say that, okay, if I were to use code and build the stuff that I have to, it would possibly be a lot more costly and also take a lot more time. And early on, what you require from your product is not fixed. It's an ever evolving process, right? On one day your process is one, and then within 2 months you see that processes have totally changed. You need something that is as malleable as the growth of your startup. And in that, we felt that we need to be working with tools where it could actually react to our ever-changing needs, right? And we were not in a place, of course, like a lot of our competitors are very big. Many of them raise a huge amount of money, so maybe they have an entire, like, truckload of developers, who are ready to immediately get going on the new features that they want. But that's not the case with us. Like, a lot of the product work at Flexible is still done by Rishikesh and me, right? So we actually build our product. So in such a case, we felt that no code helps us get that quick level of being able to solve for the bottlenecks that we have, while being able to address the constraints that we have to build with. And it also, of course, as I said, it brings a certain number of constraints to the table, but it is a certain number of constraints that I'm happy with, right? Because when there are no constraints, your mind starts racing away. You feel that why don't I build this new thing? Why don't I make it a Ferrari? Why don't I make it a BMW? If a Maruti car can get you from X to Y, just use a Maruti car and get from there. So I think no code tools it does that for us. And yeah, I think people should also use it as much as possible.
Right. I think in short, what you're also saying is use tools that will flow in the way your process flows, instead of restricting you to flow only according to the way the tool flows, right? So
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
perhaps, yeah.
So in essence, I think your tech is supposed to enable your startup. Your startup is not supposed to enable tech, right? Like, in the sense that tech is supposed to make things easier for you. Like, but nowadays tech has become such an over buzzy word, in terms of AI, ML, blockchain, and so on. People obsess so much over it, and they forget what they started up originally for. So I think for us, again, even no-code tools or tools in general are a means to an end. That's how it is.
That's great. Thank you. And we have a question here. It's from Manish Sharma. How many times in your mind you reshaped your startup idea before actually leaving your job to give full time for the startup? How many times in your mind did you reshape your startup idea?
So, as I said, I had already left my job and I was in an MBA school, but I had to leave my placements, right? Like, so I had to leave a possible job, and I could have possibly got a good job, good paying job. So I think it was not so much about whether I want to leave the job or not. It was about trying to find the right idea to work on. I had already made up my mind that I am going to leave my job, or any particular job that I could have possibly got, because I was just not happy or passionate doing those kinds of things, and I was very clear entrepreneurship is what I want to be doing. But in terms of the idea, I think the idea keeps evolving. I think the idea is evolving even today, right? And even 4 years, 5 years through, I think it still evolves, because we listen to customers, we listen to the things that are happening with us, and you get a better understanding of the market every single day. But yes, I struggled with what the idea should be in the first year a lot, and kept trying to get back to the drawing board and so on. But I think if there is someone who, like, Manish, who's thinking of starting up, I think just start up, right? As in, expecting that you'll get absolute clarity and enlightenment on day zero is a fallacy, right? That doesn't exist. You have to start up, you have to make those mistakes, you have to get rejections, you have to do things wrong, and then eventually figure your way out, get pushed around till you find the right idea for yourself.
Right. I think I will extend Manish's question and ask you this instead. At what point do you stop iterating on your idea? At what point do you know, okay, this is the direction I have to push through?
I think, as I said, our idea is evolving even today. But what I meant by that is that, of course, the core direction remains same, in the sense that we have highly talented freelancers, we have great tech companies, and we are connecting the two of them, right? So that's the core basis of the idea. Now, once you fix on that, whether you fix on it or not is, of course, over a period of time, you realize how you want to go about it. But we fixed on it fairly quickly, maybe in the first 3 to 4 months, right? But then how we really want to monetize it, how much should we charge? And then how should we make the transaction go through? Should it be through manual interventions, through tech? Where do we acquire them, and so on? I would count all of them as part of the idea, right? Because if Uber didn't have an app, right, such things existed even before, right? Taxis have been there forever. So even that simple thing as an app made what Uber is, right? So I would say all of these various components came to us not in the first year. They came to us over a period of time, over the course of 2 or 3 years, and they all added up to what our idea is actually composed of. So as long as you think that you are reducing the friction in which you are able to execute your idea, I think you're in the right direction. If you think that forever, it's like an uphill climb and it's getting really exhausting and you're not able to find one gasp of air, I think possibly it's a time that you need to think if there needs to be a really serious change that you need to be making versus just maybe a minor tweak. But yeah, I think it's a process which is tough to articulate and more about experience.
Yeah, perfectly, definitely. And Karthik, venturing into anything new is risky. In that way, startup is risky. But even when we ride a bike for the first time or drive a car for the first time, the first thing we are taught is how to slow down or how to stop. So in a business, how do you learn when to stop or rather pivot?
Yeah, tough question. So I don't think I guess on that level, because as I said, for me, I when I say me, I mean obviously my two co-founders as well. So I think we've always been at a pace where we're comfortable. So it's about not saying I suddenly cruised at 250 kilometers per hour and now I am not able to manage the speed at which we are, right? And that's where the entire vision or the number of months into the future that we're looking at has always evolved. We never looked at 5 years into the future and said, come on, let's ramp up stuff, let's hire 100 people and let's get ready. We've always been at a pace that all of us are extremely comfortable with. So coming to a stop has not been really too difficult, right? So there have been times when we tried outbound sales, for example, right? And we invested 6 to 8 months and we hardly got any results of it. And it was easy for us to say, okay, fine, this is not it. Inbound is how we need to go about it. So let's drop it and let's go. But we never went into it saying, let's hire 50 salespersons and let's invest into it, such that it came to a make or break situation, right? So slowing down was never a problem. So it was just two people working on it till they were able to find success. The moment we do find success and we feel that the only thing that is stopping us from replicating it is more number of people on it, that time we don't stop. That time we just go really hard on it. So I think it is about being able to find a replicable success and then just doubling down on it.
Beautiful. That's a great point, Karthik. Thank you. We've spoken enough about mistakes and challenges and all of those things. Let's talk about success. Like, what is contributing to Flexible success? Because you're obviously profitable, and within 4 years, might I say, what are the things that worked for you?
I think at least in the last 2 years, talking very tangibly and business focused, I think it's been inbound that has really driven our success. And while a lot of our success has come in the last 1 year, if you were to just look at pure output metrics, right? It's been a product of all the hard work that we've put over the past 3 or 4 years as well. So we focused a lot on SEO pipelines, really doubling down on it, ensuring now we get more than 150,000 visits every month on our website. Then Rishikesh and I have focused a lot on ensuring that Flexiple's brand gets out there and people get to know about who we are. So we've done a lot of that on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and we try to do that quite a bit. We're there on relevant communities. And as I said, we've made a lot of mistakes, right? So it's ensured that we've corrected for every single mistake one by one, right? So now we have gotten to a level where, as I just mentioned, we've understood what replicable success is, right? And we are making less mistakes than what we used to earlier. It's not that we're not making any, but it's just less. So I think it's been all of these various aspects and them coming together at the right time that now we're able to see the kind of success, at least at the level that we are, to the degree that we're getting. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So there is Tarun asking a question. Is scale really a product born out of hobby, or did you think it would be a good strategy for Flexible? So scale is again one of your products, right? So the question again is, that's the question. Is scale really a product born out of hobby, or did you think it would be a good strategy for Flexible?
I guess all of us, the three of us, really like to build products, right? So I would say it's a part of both. but
Do
we
you
would never.
want to talk what scale is first for
Sure,
those
sure,
of
sure.
us who don't know about it? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So scale, basically we offer high quality illustrations. So illustrations are graphics, etc., that you put on your website or PowerPoint on your posters and so on. Absolutely free. You don't need to attribute to us whatsoever. So it's totally open source in that aspect. And we have a lot of tools on our website such that you can customize the illustration to your branding, your colors, the way you want to, and so on. So it becomes really easy because I think very early on in your startup, making illustrations for your startup is really very costly. And we faced it ourselves. So we thought that this might be an interesting idea to work on. And there were a few products which are already doing a good job. We thought even we can do it, especially given that our offering is tailored to developers and designers as well. Right. So in that context, of course, we like to make products. So it started as something that we would enjoy doing. But we can't justify things just because we enjoy doing it. It also has to have some kind of business impact because it takes a lot of time, right? Like a lot of effort has gone into building scale. So what we thought is that, and in general, what marketing thesis is that we should build things that our target audience, which is let's say startups and developers and designers, truly find useful, right? And in such a way, if Flexible benefits as a result in terms of its brand getting built and it getting marketed, maybe we get some leads, etc., that's an amazing bonus for us. So yes, it is something that is born out of wanting goodwill out of our target audience, and we like to do such things. A lot of the stuff that we share very transparently on Twitter, etc., learnings, lessons, etc., is also born out of that. That we want to, be helpful to our community, as I would like to call it. So scale was born out of that. We're trying to help our community, and if we benefit out of as a result of it, super happy.
Beautiful. I mean, it serves both ways, right? You need it
Sure.
for your marketing, and it is serving the people also, and that's the best way to do it. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
And
Sure.
Julian says that for us as a service company, it is important to progress step by step in the growth of the company and be able to move forward slowly, but with the assurance that our customers are not the victim of too strong growth driven by marketing, not connected to production. Bootstrapping really pays off in the long run. Thank you for pointing that out today. Thank you, Julian.
No, very well said. Very well
yeah.
said. Yeah, of course.
So I see on your social pages, Karthik, that you have repeatedly spoken not to build a business just for the money involved. So I want to ask you, or understand rather, your inner workings of your mind and try to fathom how do you see Flexible and remote tool aside from mere money-making ventures?
So, as I said, when I, at least personally, I'm sure Rishikesh and Suvanch have their stories to share, but from my perspective, entrepreneurship was largely about chasing happiness, right? Doing something that I was happy doing every single day. And of course, happiness means that I need to be able to sustain my family, sustain myself. I don't mean to starve and, not sustain myself. But at the same time, being at JP Morgan, and I saw a lot of, I was paid well, and so on. So I saw that money is not the only thing that can give you happiness, right? And money is not the only thing that can drive passion in you, at least for me. And that's where I think everyone needs to do their own soul searching and find out what drives them, right? So for me, it was doing something that I was really passionate about every single day. I don't think it makes sense for me, at least personally, to be able to be doing some work that doesn't drive me intrinsically. And I was confident that I could do something and that I would not just starve to death, right? So that's where, for me, while people keep saying that entrepreneurship is risky or startups are risky, I think a bigger risk in life is doing something that you're really unhappy doing versus doing something. And I'm obviously talking from an entitled position. Of course, most of us, I feel, can take that entitled position because all of us come from, at least a middle class upwards kind of, place. So we can take that position and then we owe it to ourselves to be happy in what we're doing. And that's been more or less my mission with which I've trying to approach Flexible and remote tools. Of course, I wanted to succeed. Of course, I wanted to grow, but that's not what drives me. I think every single morning I'm really excited to do the work that I'm doing because I really truly enjoy what I'm doing, and that's something that I was chasing for a while, and I'm happy that I found it in Flexible and remote tools.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so I think Flexible is in the marketplace business, right? Would it be okay to
Yeah,
say
it's
that?
fair to
Okay.
call it. Yeah.
Yeah. In any marketplace business, there is a chicken and egg problem. Assuming you manage to get enough freelancers, how do you manage to attract customers? Or do you attract customers and then your freelancers come in place? Or how does that work for you? What was challenging there?
I think there's no elegant answer for this. For us, again, we are first-time entrepreneurs, so it wasn't like we had built many marketplaces before, and this was a cakewalk for us. I think a marketplace is a struggle of just hustling around, right? Like being able to do enough such that the two grow at somewhat the same pace, right? Even today, I wouldn't say that we're at a position that the supply and demand are so ideally matched that it's just going on a flywheel by itself. That's not true. I think there is a certain amount of human intervention required even today to say, okay, I think the client side is growing really, really great, and we need to improve the supply of freelancers. So I think it's never ever going struggle. However, having said that, I think in the early days, what we did was just manually, we said, okay, get 10 freelancers, start listing them, ensure that they're the best quality freelancers possible. I think at least for us, since it's not a pure product based marketplace, right, where the product drives everything. For us, it was what we call a managed marketplace, right? So because our focus is on ensuring quality is really high, even if we don't have a huge number of freelancers, so we could handpick and get, let's say, 10 to 20 freelancers. Once we had 10 to 20, we said, okay, now we had 10 to 20, why don't we start talking to companies? Of course, we'll not stop onboarding new freelancers, but while we are talking to some companies, maybe one of the 10 or 20 might actually get mapped here. Then you get your first testimonial from a company who's happy about us. Then you try to get a second one, then your third one, and try to build on that kind of momentum. So thinking that you will get a huge amount of supply and suddenly that is what will get you going is not true. And to get 10 to 20 people, we would have got rejected by 100 or 200 freelancers. So there was no, I think, elegant or amazing solution that we came up with. It was just a lot of patient rejections that we had to face.
Beautiful. I mean, throughout this discussion, one thing I keep noticing is every single decision or every single thing that has worked for you is completely organic. There is no gate crashing or there is no money pouring over the head kind of a situation. It's all been a slow, simple, and everyday step, right?
I think that's a survivor bias, right? Like, and not only a survivor bias, but what makes the news, right? What makes the news is something that's very flashy. People like to hear about overnight success, but overnight success is like many years in, right? Like you have to work hundreds of years to then realize that, okay, overnight, if suddenly people have thought of you as a success. And that's what's been for us. Like till 1.5 years before, I don't think our growth was exponential, but all the work that we put in till that point of time, I think suddenly just came together. And now in the last 12 months, we reached our first $1 million. Now we've grown to 2 million in just about 4 months. Hopefully we get to 3 million as well soon. So I think it is about not looking too far ahead and just being patient and allowing things to come together and being resilient enough to ensure things come together at a certain point of time.
Beautiful. And Tarun here has one more interesting question, which I kind of like too. So you are building your own brand too, as equal as Flexible, I would say. Do you want to talk about that? I think that's what Tarun means by his question. He's curious to know about your brand building.
Frankly, I a lot of my family made a lot of fun of me because I was never part of social media, right? Family, friends. Till early last year, I didn't have an account on Facebook, Twitter, and all of these social platforms. So I and social media are not something that have been gelling together for years together.
Yeah,
of course,
I should interrupt and tell the viewers that you did not have one extra photo to give us for the creatives.
Yes, I don't have too many photos taken of myself, and as
so
you can see, yes, thank you. As you can see, even I'm very underdressed for this occasion. So usually I'm not so much into social media and so on. But as I said earlier in our chat, I realized that a lot of the narrative that is there mainstream is of tech startups which are VC funded. And we realized that we also need to have our narratives conveyed to people. So so it became a sort of necessity for us to be able to talk about what we are doing. And since and that's true about even Rishikesh or Suvansh, they are also not naturally social media focused people. So we asked ourselves, what is something we would be comfortable doing, right? Like, so we can't just come out and talk about our daily personal lives, and that's not us. So what we felt comfortable doing is just talking about our startup experiences, what we have learned, and what we felt might be useful for other people. So I wouldn't really talk about all of this as my personal brand. I think what I'm just trying to do is, of course, something that would be helpful for Flexible, and that's my startup. And doing that in a way that would be helpful for everyone out there who's also trying to go on a similar journey. So do it in a way that I can get up in the morning and write a Twitter post, right? So I need to be able to do that. So for me to be able to do that, I need to be truthful to myself. And for me to do that, I am writing what I'm experiencing on a daily basis while building a startup.
So in a sense, your social media presence is as good as your product scale. Both serve the same philosophy.
Absolutely. That's what it is.
Yeah. So we hear from news, Karthik, that in the first half of 2021 alone, $12 billion were raised by Indian startups. And this excessive capital has triggered a talent crunch, obviously. Even heavily funded companies are finding it hard to discover talent. So do you see this as an opportunity for the freelance market?
I think everyone has their way of looking at building a startup, looking at a market and so on. But the way I would like to think about this entire framework is there are two ways of looking at it. One is the top-down approach, where you say the market is so big, the market is growing at this level, and there are these new macro factors that have gotten into place and so on. And the other way is the bottom-up approach, right? Where you know where you are and you know them really very well, and you work on those factors, those intrinsic things that you know so very well. For me, the former doesn't work, right? Because I just don't think that thinking about a market really helps me make better decisions today. I need to understand what are the problems my startup is facing, and I need to be solving for them, right? A top-down approach works when you're maybe in a very early phase of your idea, where you think that you're doing something so crazy that only a macro factor is going to support it or break it. I think most ideas are not like that whatsoever, right? Or it can be in those places where it's so regulatory driven that certain regulations make or break your startup. I think most software startups aren't in any of those places, right? So as much, if anyone wants to follow my thesis, I would say don't think about macro factors. Think about things that are controllable in your domain, things which you know well, and then build on top of it. It's nice. Tomorrow, there might be a new ruling by the government which says we really support independent contractors. Now, how am I supposed to view that legislation and come up with a strategy for Flexible? I don't think there's any point of that. And lastly, I don't think the size of the market really is constraining Flexible at this point of time. Right? I think the only thing that I think we hold our own destiny. How well we do or how badly we do decides how we grow or don't grow. Right? So it's not really about the market suddenly, quadrupling that we suddenly realize, oh wow, now Flexible is going to go out of, grow crazy. So I think most of these macroeconomic factors are good, but I try to not, it's better to keep your mind simple, and that's why I try not to bother myself with a lot of these kind of news articles.
Yeah, that philosophy definitely comes through, Karthik. Thank you so much. With that, it is a wrap. And on behalf of Zoho, I wish you and all your ventures a good luck. And I think I will talk to you again when you hit a 3 million.
Absolutely. I hope it's very soon. And thank you for having me here. It was an absolute pleasure and a lot of fun talking to you.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you, Karthik. See you.
See you.